Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Major Mohammed Ali Shah, and today is my proud privilege. Whether I would say good afternoon, in fact, just turned 12, so good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And today I'm really honored and privileged. I have a personality who needs no introduction. You all know her, you all adore her, you all like her, you all love her. But here I'm feeling elated because we were just discussing offline just before we came online that I haven't met Dr. Sarabhai since Kala Ghoda, where I saw her perform live. And trust you me, the standing ovation, the applause, उसी दिन दोस्तों बारिश हो गई थी रात को. और बारिश इसलिए हुई थी क्योंकि जो तालियों की खनखनाहट थी, जो गरज गए बादल, बस it is phenomenal. Well, इंसान, let me tell you one thing. What I had heard ma'am speak once, कि इंसान किस खानदान में पैदा होता है वो जरूरी नहीं है, इंसान खुद क्या करता है वो बहुत जरूरी है. Ma'am had made the statement once. She comes from a very, very illustrious family, the famous Sarabhai family. Her father, Vikram Sarabhai, was the famous scientist, famous. I know he is not just her father, he is the father of the Indian space research, in fact, who was very closely associated with C.V. Raman as well. We'll come to that. And her mother, Mrs. Minali Sarabhai, very famous dancer, you all know her. Well, her mother had the honor of being awarded with a Padma Shri, Padma Bhushan. Her father got a Padma Bhushan. Well, when got a Padma Vibhushan, posthumous. Dr. Mallika Sarabhai is herself Padma Bhushan. So let me begin, in fact, in conversation with her, who's got an MBA from the prestigious IIM Ahmedabad. Well, ma'am, I am from IIM Calcutta, so though there's no rivalry, but
we were always competing with you.
right. And she has a master's degree in the organization behavior from. We'll come to that. We'll come to that subsequently. Ma'am, first tell us a bit about your early childhood, about the education, because your parents, being the illustrious figure that they have given you the best of education any parent could have gifted to the child. So tell me a bit about your early years as a child, ma'am.
I went to what was the first ever Montessori school started by and with the help of Madame Montessori, school called Shreyas that was run by my aunt, Leena Mangaldas, Papa's older sister. It was an extraordinary school because all the years that I was in the school, I had no idea that the world treated men and women differently or different communities differently, different castes. So I had no idea. We were tiny classes, 6 to 8 in a class, and everybody did everything. And one of the proud things was to get a triple plus in the way you kept public toilets clean. So I played football, the guys did dancing and music, I did carpentry, everybody did sewing, everybody did agricultural work. It was that kind of a school, and it was pretty extraordinary. Yeah, it was. And I think it's what laid a lot of the foundations for my basically egalitarian views about life, my fight for equality for everybody, for non-discrimination, and for not thinking that any work is high or low or beneath my dignity. I think that came from Shreyas.
Right, ma'am. Ma'am, so tell us about when you went to IIM Ahmedabad and when you got the admission, because IIM Ahmedabad is not easy to get through, and in fact people perceive the IIMs, लोग गलतफहमी हो जाती है अक्सर लोगों को मेरे बारे में भी कि अरे ये IIM का बंदा है तो बड़ा इंटेलिजेंट होगा, हालांकि I am an exception, that's a different thing. तो मैं, but tell me about when you had cracked the cat and when you went to IIM Ahmedabad, तो वो दौर कैसा था?
मेरे लिए काफी मुश्किल था. मेरे सब कॉन्वर्सेशंस आईएम के बारे में पापा के साथ हुआ करते थे. पापा वाज द फाउंडर हु हैड द ड्रीम ऑफ स्टार्टिंग मैनेजमेंट इंस्टीट्यूशंस इन इंडिया. तो हमेशा पापा और मेरी यह बात होती थी कि मैंने जब आईएम में एमबीए कर लिया तब पापा गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया से रिजाइन करेंगे और फिर हम हिंदुस्तान में जैसे इंस्टीट्यूशंस होने चाहिए, पब्लिक हेल्थ के, एजुकेशन के, रूरल डेवलपमेंट के, वैसे इंस्टीट्यूशंस पर कॉन्सेंट्रेट करके ऐसे इंस्टीट्यूशंस बिल्ड कैसे करें. 30 दिसंबर 1971 को पापा का सडनली देहांत हुआ. 31 दिसंबर को मैंने उनका अग्निदाह किया. 1 जनवरी को मेरी आईआईएम की परीक्षा थी, मुझे नहीं लेनी थी. मैं कोई हालात में नहीं थी कि मैं परीक्षा दूं, लेकिन आईआईएम में मेरे बहुत अच्छे मित्र थे जो लिटरली मुझे ड्रैग करके ले गए, और वो 4 घंटे की परीक्षा मैंने कैसे दी मुझे नहीं मालूम। आई गॉट थ्रू इट। उसके बाद जब इंटरव्यू था तो ज़्यादातर लोगों के लिए 3 लोग इंटरव्यू करते थे, मेरे इंटरव्यू में 12 प्रोफेसर्स थे। Somehow I got in, and when I got in and went to the IIM, I had a complete nervous breakdown. तो लोग कहने लगे कि इसको तो चैरिटी पे ली है, बुद्धू लड़की है, विक्रम साराभाई का देहांत हो गया इसलिए उसको ली है। तो पहला साल बहुत मुश्किल था मेरे लिए, लेकिन अगेन आई हैड मेड सम एक्स्ट्रॉर्डिनरी फ्रेंड्स हु लिटरली टॉट मी हाउ टू वॉक अगेन। और दूसरे साल में सबका मैंने कचरा कर दिया, बहुत मजा आया क्योंकि bottom of the hill से top of the hill पहुंच गई, and lots of people came and apologized and said we are really sorry to have said that you've been taken on charity, and we understand, and you must have been put into a very bad situation because everything must have reminded you of Papa, which it did, because everything from the library to every building was something that was planned while I sat on my father's lap as a child. So it was a very difficult period.
Ma'am, I can, as we speak now, I can see Begum, your German Shepherd, peep from there and wondering what ma'am is doing and such things. Say hi to her. Give her a pat from our side.
I will. Hi, Begum. तने बुलावे छे. जो तने बुलावे. आती रहे. Yeah, there's Begum. Oui.
Hello, Begum. We have a Labrador. We have we have Casper with us. So this
Okay.
Casper was like just like Begum. He was not leaving me. He was just, go from here. And then I saw Vasant over there. Okay, he was with Begum, and Chandan was there with Begum. So I was like, then I thoda aram se, thoda ease hua main. Okay.
I have another Dober girl whose name is Noor, who thinks that she is my laptop. So मैं अगर यहाँ बैठी हूँ तो वो ऐसे बैठी होगी यहाँ. So she's the only one. Begum is very shani. She sits quietly through hundreds of Zoom messages, Zoom sessions of mine. But Noor wouldn't let me go for one instant, and you would only see Noor in the camera.
How sweet is that, man? How sweet. We have a cat as well, Coco. So cat and dog both are coexisting together in the same house. Can you beat that? But
yeah, of course, that's how we should coexist as well.
हाई फाइव मैम, बहुत सही कहा आपने, बहुत सही फरमाया आपने, और आपने बहुत ही अच्छी बात करी. वी मस्ट कोएग्जिस्ट एज वेल, एंड ये बहुत जरूरी है. दिस इज समथिंग really really important, and which today as humanity, in fact, we see what's happening on the world. Yeah, Russia, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, Iran, and America. We see whole lot of people,
much worse. Indian against Indian, much worse. It's not even a foreign body. We are killing our own people. We are annihilating them. We are raping them. We are brutalizing our own people.
That is what is like really, really sad, ma'am. Exactly. Ma'am, tell me about your dancing. Your mother, Mrinalini Sarabhai, was a very renowned dancer. And did you, आपको वो जरासिम dancing के वहां से आए, या आपको खुद, अगर आपको लगता नहीं कि had you been Mrinalini Sarabhai's daughter, you yourself would have been interested in dancing, तो वो डांस की जो रुचि थी वो कहाँ से जागी मैम आपके?
कभी डांस नहीं करना था प्रोफेशनली, क्योंकि मैं जानती थी कितना मुश्किल है, कितनी मेहनत जाती है, कितनी फिजिकल मेहनत जाती है. बुखार है तो अभी परफॉर्मेंस है तो करना पड़ता है. मैं काफ़ी लेजी बच्ची थी, मुझे किताब लेकर बैठने में ज़्यादा मज़ा आता था. लेकिन हमेशा सीखी, और जब कॉलेज और आईएम में भी जब इंटरकॉलेजिएट कॉम्पिटिशन्स हुआ करती थी तब हमेशा जीतती थी, तो लोग कहते थे तुम्हें डांस करना चाहिए, लेकिन मुझे नहीं करना था. और फिर काफ़ी साल बाद, रिलेटिवली लेट, मैं 22 साल की थी तब, एक पर्सनल डिप्रेशन में थी, एक रिलेशनशिप तोड़ दी थी मैंने खुद. तो एक दिन बस उठकर ये महसूस हुआ कि मैं क्या कर रही हूँ, मुझे तो डांस करना है. तो ऐसे हुआ, लेकिन लकीली हमेशा ट्रेनिंग ली थी, तो वो डिसीजन इतना मुश्किल नहीं था कि पहले से सीखना पड़े.
जी मैम. मैम, आपने 1970s में आपने मिथुन चक्रवर्ती, सुनील दत्त और बड़े बड़े सितारों के साथ आपने काम किया है बड़े पर्दे पे. उस अनुभव के बारे में थोड़ा कुछ बताइए हमको प्लीज.
मैंने पहले तो ऑल्टरनेटिव सिनेमा से शुरुआत हुई मेरी 1971 में. इनफैक्ट जस्ट बिफोर माय फादर पास्ड अवे, I had begun my first film with Prabhat Mukherjee. इंसेस्ट के बारे में फिल्म थी, लो बजट. लेकिन उस टाइम तो न्यू वेव सिनेमा का भी ज़माना शुरू नहीं हुआ था। न्यू वेव स्टार्टेड इन इंडिया अराउंड 75-76। तो न्यू वेव से भी पहले मैं न्यू वेव फ़िल्म कर रही थी। तो 3 फ़िल्म ऐसे की, एक भी डिस्ट्रीब्यूट नहीं हुई, क्रिटिक्स अवार्ड मिले, लेकिन अगर फ़िल्म इस ऐसा माध्यम है कि ऑडियंस नहीं है तो फ़िल्म बनाकर फ़ायदा क्या? इट्स नॉट लाइक पेंटिंग के खुद बस एन्जॉय कर सकते हैं। तो मुझे लगा कि ये तो मुझे नहीं करना, मैं कटाल गई। तो सत्यदेव दुबे मेरे मैनेजर हुआ करते थे, बहुत मित्र थे। उन्होंने कहा एक तो कमर्शियल फ़िल्म ट्राई करो। तो सुनील दत्त पापा के मित्र थे, तो सुनील दत्त के साथ प्रकाश मेहरा की ऑफ़र आई। हिमालय से ऊँचा करके फ़िल्म थी। मेरा एक्सपीरियंस बहुत गंदा रहा इस फ़िल्म में। बहुत कारण अलग-अलग कारण थे। तो मुझे नहीं करनी थी। फिर डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर ने देखकर कहा दत्त साहब से कि ये तो इतनी छोटी लगती है कि ये रोमांस बिल्कुल नामुमकिन है, कन्विंसिंग ही नहीं है, तो मेरा पूरा रोल कट गया। तो मैंने कहा सत्यदेव से कि मुझे तो दूसरी कमर्शियल फ़िल्म नहीं करनी है, मुझे बिल्कुल मज़ा नहीं आता। बट ही कन्विंस्ड मी टू डू हेरा-फेरी विद अमिताभ एंड विनोद खन्ना। तो पहले ही दिन गाना कर रही थी तो डांस मास्टर के साथ झगड़ा हो गया, क्योंकि उसने कहा छाती का डांस करो, तो मैंने एक कुर्सी पड़ी थी उसके सर पे तोड़ के मैं इंडस्ट्री से निकल गई। उसके बहुत साल बाद बीच में बहुत गुजराती फ़िल्में की। उसके बहुत साल बाद बासुदा ने आके मुझे शीशा नहीं कथा करने के कथा नहीं, शीशा करने के लिए कहा। अगेन इट वाज़ अ वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग स्टोरी, क्योंकि सेक्रेटेरियल कक्षा की एक औरत को जब बॉस रेप करता है और बॉस के दोस्त ऐसे होते हैं कि जज तक उनके हाथ में है, जो आज हो रहा है हमारे हमारे जूरी और पूरे जुडिशरी में। और लड़की कहती है कि नहीं, मैं एक दिन तो मैं देख लूँगी आपको। तो it was very much my kind of feminist role. So I did that. I got an award for that as well. Then Saeed Paranjpe came and asked me to do Shisha with Farooq Sheikh and Nasiruddin Shah. तो वो भी किया, मज़े की दोनों फ़िल्म थी, डायरेक्टर्स अच्छे थे, यूनिट अच्छे थे। और फिर तो मैं महाभारत करने चली गई 5 साल। तो कभी इंडस्ट्री में फुल टाइम आना चाहती नहीं थी, लेकिन आज ज़रूर चाहती हूँ कि कोई अच्छा रोल लिखे मेरे लिए, या ओटीटी पे या फ़िल्म में, तो बड़ा मज़ा आए करने का।
जी मैम। मैम मेरे को याद है मैं सही प्रांशपी से मिला था मैं बम्बई में, कुछ चंद एक साल हो गए, कई साल हो गए बल्कि। तो उस टाइम पे गुफ्तगू में आपका ज़िक्र बहुत निकला था और नसीर साहब का भी ज़िक्र निकला था। तो उसी टाइम से मेरे ज़हन में था और आपको मैं एक बात और बता दूँ मैं। हम जब मिले थे काला घोड़ा में बम्बई में और जब मैंने आपकी परफ़ॉर्मेंस देखी थी, उससे कुछ चंद एक साल पहले मेरी बहुत ही ब्रीफ मीटिंग मुलाकात आपको याद भी नहीं होगा इसलिए मैं याद भी नहीं दिलाया आपको। आपसे मेरी मुलाकात हुई थी एनएसडी में, दिल्ली में।
ओह! ओह!
तो जी, तो सन 2010 में मैंने भारंगम एनर्जी थिएटर फेस्टिवल में परफॉर्म किया था। मैंने आई डन अ प्ले बाय मॉटली। इन फैक्ट यू मेंशन अबाउट सत्यदेव दुबे, ही वन
हाँ।
ऑफ द फाउंडिंग मेंबर्स ऑफ मॉटली थिएटर कंपनी विद नसीर साहब एंड रत्ना पाठक शाह एंड बेंजामिन गिलानी एंड टॉम वॉल्टर, दे हैड फाउंडेड इट टुगेदर. So I had a very brief meeting with you, and that's the time I went and bought this sweatshirt. ये एनएसडी भारंगम की उसी साल की बात है ये.
Was it
So
the
उसके
year when
बाद
I was performing Phaedra at the festival?
that is
Yes,
right, ma'am.
yes, that's
Exactly,
right.
yes.
That's
Exactly,
right.
yes. So और मैं आपसे दूर से एंड आई वाज सो मच इन ऑफ यू ना. मैंने आपको देखा था दूर से ही वो बड़ी सी बिंदी के साथ एंड आई वाज लाइक थिंकिंग मैं जाऊं कि नहीं जाऊं, मिलने के लिए जाऊं कि नहीं जाऊं. इंसान सोचता है 10 बार, फिर हिम्मत करके मैं आया आपके पास एंड यू आर वेरी वार्म, यू आर वेरी स्वीट एंड यू आर वेरी वेरी. आई वाज ओवरवेल्म्ड, आई वाज ट्रूली ओवरवेल्म्ड बाय दैट मैम. एंड उसके बाद सालों लग गए ज़हन में सोचते-सोचते, फिर मैं आपको कॉन्टैक्ट किया, फिर काला घोड़ा के टाइम पे आया, देन आई वाज़ लकी एंड टुडे आई एम हियर, आई मीन स्पीकिंग टू यू. इट्स लाइक सच अ प्रिविलेज, सच अ प्रिविलेज, सच अ प्रिविलेज. Ma'am, your son also is a renowned actor, writer, and he's doing very well for himself in Mumbai, in fact. So tell us a bit about his work as well, how much he's inspired by you and how much he learns from you, ma'am.
You know, unlike me, who was a reluctant dancer for many years before I took to it, Revanta at the age of 5 said to me, I want to dance, can I learn? My daughter was like me. She's a beautiful dancer, but didn't want to dance, and only started dancing professionally because she was constantly left alone in the house. Amma, Revanta, and I would go off on tour, and she was left alone. So कहते अच्छा करती हूँ. But Revanta, on the other hand, was like my mother, that he knew from a very, very young age that he wanted to dance. And because Darpana is the kind of institution it is, dance bhi kar lo, acting bhi seekh lo, thoda puppetry bhi seekh lo, thoda gana bhi seekh lo, thoda music bhi seekh lo. And a lot of my own productions are not strictly this or strictly that. They use a lot of cross pollination. So do a lot of dance theater. I use digital media. I use masks, all sorts of things. So Revanta and Anaita both grew up doing this kind of cross training. And then Revanta did a bachelor's in America in film and media, and then a master's in England in choreography and creative dance. And then for several years, he did three very bad Gujarati films. He wanted to act. Then Rocket Boys came along, and I got very involved in scripting Rocket Boys and in creating the choreography for Rocket Boys. And Revanta was helping me train the dancers. Shoot पे आया था मेरे साथ. और निखिल अडवाणी वगैरह ने उसको देखा, और फिर जब रॉकेट बॉयज की सीजन बहुत सक्सेसफुल हो गई, सेकंड सीजन होने आई थी, तब उन्होंने कहा कि तो रेवंता से कि तुम एसोसिएट डायरेक्टर बन जाओ. सो रेवंता मूव्ड इन मार्च टू बॉम्बे, और their relationship has grown, and now he is like working directly under Nikhil, looking at everything from scripts to production to casting, and he's writing his own script. So he's finally exactly where he wanted to be, and he's enjoying it very much. I'm very glad. लेकिन उसका dancing छूट गया.
Ma'am, a khas baat, one really good thing like about you, about Revanta, about you people are from such an illustrious background, such an illustrious family. मतलब आपके परिवार का जो योगदान है, even beat our freedom struggle, beat anywhere, it is unmatched completely. But yet at the same time, all of you have made your own, you've carved your own individual identity, carved your own niche, and that is really, really remarkable, ma'am. I really salute you for that. मैम ऑल्सो आप आपने सीन कटने की बात की कि आपके कुछ सीन कट गए थे, एंड रेवांता हैड डन 3 गुजराती फिल्म व्हिच ही डिडंट रियली एंजॉय मच. मैम उसका दर्द ना मेरे को बड़े अच्छे तरीके से मालूम है. मेरा बड़ा अच्छा रोल था बजरंगी भाईजान में, है सलमान खान की सुपर मेगा हिट फिल्म, एंड ये वो, एंड आई वाज सो लुकिंग फॉरवर्ड टू इट, एंड आई हैड शॉट. बट यस, एक बात तो है उनकी, आई दे पेड मी very honestly, very with lot of integrity, and they gave full money to me. बट जब मैं ईद के टाइम पे रिलीज का इंतजार कर रहा था कि भाई दिस वाज गोइंग टू बी अ गेम चेंजर फॉर माय एक्टिंग करियर दैट टाइम, मेरे को मालूम पड़ा कि मेरे सीन ही पूरे कट गए इसमें, वाइप आउट. आपने बात
लेकिन मैं तो रोमांटिक लीड थी, मेरे सीन कट गए, सो द फिल्म डिडंट मेक एनी सेंस एट ऑल.
एग्जैक्टली, एंड their loss ultimately, and फिर आपने देखा कि भाई because the film didn't make any sense, तो उन्होंने बहुत बड़ी गलती करी. फिर मैम टैशकिन फाइल आई थी, उसमें मेरे सीन नसीर साहब के साथ में थे, and Nasir Saab has been my mentor, my guru, and I have really learned a lot from him, and I've looked up to him all the time. So I have done theatre workshops with him, I've shared the stage with him live, and now sharing the screen with him. It was a dream. अब जब वही वाइप आउट हो गया तो इसका दर्द, और भी की चीजें हैं, उसका दर्द मैं बड़े अच्छे तरीके से एम्पैथाइज कर सकता हूँ. बट यू आर राइट मैम. बट मैम ये बताइए, इतनी ज्यादा the right example of the beauty with the brains, that is you. I would say you got the talent from your mother as well, you got the talent from your father as well, but the brains of your father. And your father, could you tell us a bit about your father's association with C.V. Raman, who the whole world knows as the world genius, in fact?
Papa was studying in Cambridge in England when the Second World War broke out. And the family wanted them back. And Papa came back very reluctantly because he was with professors there whom he really wanted to work with. And he thought, if I go back to India, what will I do? But Sir C.V. Raman accepted him as a student. And that's where he was mentored. And Sir C.V. became a very dear friend. So that, for instance, here when he was starting his first institutions, Sir C.V. was here with him. And I think Sir C.V. was also delighted that he married somebody who was half Tamil, half Malayali. And that cemented his relationship with southern India even more. But he always remained, till his passing, he remained as a mentor and a guide to Papa.
Right, ma'am. And टेल मी about आप क्योंकि आप एमबीए हैं वो भी आईएम अहमदाबाद से, सो आपका एसोसिएशन एज एन alumni, आई मीन आप आखिरी मर्तबा कब गई थी आईएम अहमदाबाद?
3 years ago, but I've been very involved in this whole controversy that's been going on about breaking down the buildings and whether one can preserve the old buildings. So I was very deeply disturbed when just last week the board gave out its decision that after trying, they had decided to break down all the extraordinary Kanvinde buildings, which is in some senses the sort of mark of IIM Ahmedabad, those buildings are, and that they were not going to rebuild them in the same architectural style but in something else. And I think that is sacrilegious. It's like saying that we will break down the Qutub Minar and make a modern 50-story building there in memory of Qutub Minar. I mean, what does one say?
Very true, ma'am. Very true. I totally agree with you on that. Ma'am, you have had vast experience with working with Peter Brook. In fact, आप 5 साल चली गई महाभारत करने में. You played the role of Draupadi, in fact. And Peter Brook, Nasir Saab has done workshop with Peter Brook, and he tells us about his experience with Peter Brook. In fact, incidentally, last night I was in a similar conversation with Kalki, and Kalki has, in fact, learned, or she has worked with Peter Brook as well. So could you tell us, अब हालांकि जितनी मेरी समझ है मैम, लिमिटेड समझ है, मैं कभी मिला तो कभी हूँ नहीं, इतनी खुशनसीबी हुई नहीं पीटर ब्रूक से मिलने की, लेकिन मैंने किताबें बहुत पढ़ी हैं उनके बारे में, और स्टैन लास्की की, बल्कि मैंने काफी कुछ इस पे रिसर्च करी. तो टेल अस अबाउट योर एक्सपीरियंस ऑन हैंड डूइंग थिएटर विद पीटर ब्रूक एज द्रौपदी.
It was, for me, very painful to start with. I had never done professional theatre. I had never done anything in French. I had never been so completely cut off from my roots. And I had a newborn child. I was in France in the coldest winter in that century. I joined late because, as a matter of fact, Revanta was born the day the rehearsal started. So I joined 5 weeks later. And Peter was a follower of a seer called Gurdjieff. And Gurdjieff's theory is that you needed to completely destroy a person before that person could be born again as a new self, as a exemplary self, and so on. And I have always come from a background where even if you are doing a tragedy, the feeling is of ananda. That is the Sanskritic philosophy of art, that you don't have to be miserable. You don't have to do method acting to be able to do something properly. So there was a basic clash. Peter hired me because he thought that either Draupadi or Krishna was so uniquely Indian that one of them had to be an Indian. But then I also came with the knowledge of having read practically every version of the Mahabharata that was. So I would argue with him, and he didn't like being argued with in public in front of other people. So it was a hostile time, but everything I know about acting has come from those 5 years. Whether it was from Peter directly, whether it was from Peter pushing me, or whether it was from my own introspection and aloneness and searching of what was valid. I don't know. Perhaps it was a combination of all of that, but I have to say that those 5 years were a turning point in my career, and I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today had it not been for the understanding of the power of theatre for social change. Because Draupadi's role, as interpreted by me, was accepted by the most diverse women who didn't believe in feminism, women who believed in feminism, black women from Harlem, very stylish Danish women, indigenous women in Australia. And I thought, here is one single character cutting through and being valid for so many different people. Why am I trying to be an activist on one side and a performer on the other? The performance is my tool for activism. And while I had seen my mother doing it, I had never thought I was capable of doing it. But I I had no choice but to push myself into becoming a creator, to create the works that I now create.
Ma'am, very well said, very well said. Yes, ma'am, I am truly feeling really overwhelmed कि आपने मेरे को वक्त दिया है, and I'm feeling conscious कि आप मसरूफ भी हैं बहुत, मगर आपके साथ गुफ्तगू में इतना ज्यादा मजा आ रहा है, इतना बेहतरीन मजा आ रहा है मैम। एक सवाल मेरे जहन में आता है मैम, क्योंकि आप प्रोफेशनल डांसर थी, आपने कहाँ बड़े बड़े प्लेटफॉर्म्स पे
तो
आपने
थी
परफॉर्म किया।
क्यों कर दिया आपने?
जी मैम।
प्रोफेशनल डांसर थी क्यों कर दिया?
नहीं
मैंने
मतलब
तो
है,
कल रात को परफॉर्मेंस
नहीं नहीं है मतलब उस टाइम पे जब आप पीटर ब्रूक का जब द्रौपदी करने आई थी, तो आप ऑलरेडी मौजूद थे एज अ प्रोफेशनल डांसर, आप हैं, मतलब मैं ये कहूंगा उस टाइम पे भी थी और अभी भी हैं। और मैं ये कहूंगा कि हाउ डिफरेंट इज, बिकॉज दैट इज अगेन अ थिएटर इन अ वे, लाइक you're performing before an audience and you are performing classical dance, and now here you are acting, you're emoting. So, do you think for a novice who has not had any stage experience, say dancing or singing or public speaking, but the exposure that you have had on stage, it would help a person do theater, man?
I think a training in the arts is a character building exercise. And I genuinely feel that all children should be exposed to it to better present themselves and better get in touch with their inner self. Uh, a lot of people ask me whether my acting helps my dancing or the other way around, and I think both help each other. When I got to Peter, I had never done professional theater, but I wasn't stage conscious at all because I had been dancing professionally and I had done lots of theater. I'd done lots of college theater and school theater, but not with a group of 22 nationalities, all of whom looked at me like this Indian dancer rather than a fellow actor. So that was also daunting. But I think you have to have the courage to become vulnerable as a performer. And I think that being able to show that vulnerability to the audience, whatever your role is, or whether you are a dancer or a performer, any kind of performer, I think that is the X factor that makes or breaks a performer.
Very
And
well
that I
said.
learned both from my mother and from Peter.
Yes, ma'am. Very well said, ma'am. Ma'am, there was a. I'm sorry to. I know it's a very, very personal. It's a very, very emotional thing. In 2016, you lost your mother, who you were very, very attached to, and in fact, there was a void in your this thing, and you. It's very. It's not easy to lose a parent, of course. I mean, and you were very attached to her. But
My father, you mean?
beg your pardon, ma'am?
I lost my father when I was 16.
When you were
Yeah.
16, in fact, yes. No, and in the year 2016, you lost your mother, if I'm not mistaken, ma'am. Yes,
But she
and
had an extraordinary life, and there was a closure. With Papa, there was no closure. With Amma, she decided when she wanted to go, really, and she shut down all her systems and then said a personal goodbye to each one of us, uh, and then just shut her eyes and left. Had she not done that, I think there would have been no closure. Papa's death to me is still no closure because he died suddenly. He died when he shouldn't have died. He died alone. He was supposed to come back to Bombay, pick me up from the shooting, and we were supposed to come back and dance at New Year's Eve. Uh, and then suddenly he was not there. So, yes, it's still a void. It's still a void, and it's a void that will remain, I think.
Ji, ma'am. Ma'am, because you took so much of inspiration from your parents, especially your mother. Ma'am, let us tell us about your last night's performance. जो आपने कल रात को performance आपने जो दी है आपने, and because as an audience, as a neutral audience, I'm saying, ma'am, we were transported to a different world. We were literally mesmerized, or just जो ma'am हम trance में चले गए थे आपको देख के. And I don't need to flatter you. I'm being very, very honest, ma'am. जिस तरीके से मतलब it was a treat. वो अभी तक वो visuals मेरे को अभी भी अच्छे से, it's like video recorded in my memory, it's etched in my memory. So tell us about your last night's performance, man.
Last night was a very strange performance. I have a friend called Asif Sheikh, uh, who ran away from home because he was passionate about embroidery. And he went
I'm
to
Asif Sheikh,
Varanasi.
the actor.
No, Asif Sheikh, the
Yarao,
embroiderer.
Yarao,
No,
Yarao,
not Asif
Yarao.
Sheikh the actor.
Okay, all right, all right.
Uh, this is a textile designer, and he revives embroidery techniques. Yesterday, he completed 30 years of his work, and there was a fashion show. And I am passionate about textiles and about revival and about not letting our indigenous handcrafted textiles die out. So I was dancing at his fashion show. He has revived a technique of embroidery where beetle, the little insect beetle, when it dies, it leaves a green shell like an emerald. And apparently, 200 years ago or 300 years ago, in the Mughal courts, they used to use that for embroidery. And for the last many hundred years, this hasn't happened. And Asif had embroidered a stole with 7,000 beetle shells. And I created a dance piece to showcase the shawl. And it was held in on the facade of Jahangir's palace in Ahmedabad. And it's a very, very beautiful palace that till about 30 years ago used to be the Raj Bhavan. And I have been there as a child when Queen Elizabeth came to visit Gujarat in 1960, I think. My mother had been asked to create an evening for her, and I was very young and was asked to go and give her the program for the evening. And I have a photograph of that, a very sweet photograph. So I knew the Raj Bhavan inside. Today it's the Sardar Patel Memorial building, but the facade is very beautiful. So it was a very lovely show. And what I liked very much about it was that Asif had made contemporary designers work with different weaving and embroidery traditional artisans, and they all came on stage together to take their bow, so that the person who was actually doing the work was also given the same importance as the models who were carrying their work and the designers who normally get all the kudos for the work.
Wow, that's very, very nice, ma'am. Ma'am, tell us a bit about your relationship with your cousin Suhasini Ali. I mean, she is a very respected figure, and my brother-in-law and my sister, they are from CPIM in Calcutta. They are,
Okay.
in fact, my sister contested for the election for
Okay.
MLA from CPIM,
Okay.
yes, ma'am, from Calcutta. So tell us about.
Subhashini and I, Subhashini and I are very, very close. We have the same sense of humor. We have the same sense of commitment to the idea of India. I'm fairly left wing as well, and we get on like a house on fire. We really do. I adore the cousins on my mother's side. They are all there are people I have a lot of fun with. Subhashini's younger sister's daughter got married. So, February this year, the whole clan got together at Corbett and we had a hell of a time. And Subhashini and I, because we share the same public commitment, political commitment, not that I'm CPI at all, but
Hmm.
we care about the welfare of this nation more than the power politics and the amassing of wealth that happens in the name of public duty. So I have a lot of respect for the work she does.
Right, ma'am. Ma'am, and also like you for a long while you refused to get into politics for a lot of reasons, for your own reasons. And then what was the convincing factor which who convinced you, or what made you feel that? And I personally feel that leaders like you are very much required to be there, who influencers who people listen to, and who actually lead the way by influencing people's mind in the right direction. So I think it was a very, very good decision from, if you ask me personally, and my friends and my circle of friends, they all look at you with respect. What was that turning point which you changed your mind and you said, okay, maybe it was 2009 or something, you said, okay, let me think about politics for a while at least.
I genuinely have always felt that for India to change direction and for India to become just for the most marginalized people, what you need is not political agenda, but what you need is a set of people who want to see the constitution in action. People who want the best governance for the most marginalized, who are not caught up in ideology or religion or any of this, but are concerned. So I went around for 5 years trying to ask people if they would join me, and we would work together for good governance for a couple of years, and then stand for election from the constituency where we had already worked for 2 or 3 years. And I thought that if I could get a band of 200 people like this, and they contested elections from different places, and even if 30 of them got elected to parliament, a block of 30 people absolutely devoted to not scratching anybody's back, not having an agenda कि मैं corporate लोगों को बहुत खुश कर दूंगा या मैं इस community को खुश कर दूंगी, etc. But only saying, okay, we have a constitution, we have a set of rules, we have schemes to help these people. How do we, in a non-corrupt way, see that the system works? After 5 years of trying to convince people, not one had agreed to give up 7 years of their life. So I said, okay, let me try. Let me see if one can fight an election without corruption, without gundagardi, without alcohol being given, without people messing up with the ballot. So I stood. And it was the most dramatic learning experience of my life, and I don't regret it 1%. But I have come out thinking that when an independent who is articulate and honest stands, वो ओल्ड बॉयज क्लब बन जाती है. फिर कांग्रेस और बीजेपी और सब लोग अपने डिफरेंसेस भूल जाते हैं, क्योंकि बाहर की व्यक्ति को अंदर आके चीजें हिलाने में, चीजें स्टर करने में किसी का इंटरेस्ट नहीं है. सबके वेस्टेड इंटरेस्ट हैं, हर पार्टी के वेस्टेड इंटरेस्ट है, हर पार्टी में लोगों को पैसे बनाने हैं, हर पार्टी में लोगों को पावर पे स्टिक करना है. तो इंडिपेंडेंस, इफ यू लुक एट द हिस्ट्री ऑफ पार्लियामेंट, independent members have been decreasing and everything because these people become like an old boys club. Now, especially if there is an articulate English speaking woman, तो बहुत ही threaten हो जाते हैं. तो अगर आपको खड़े रहना है इलेक्शन में एज एन इंडिपेंडेंट, गो एंड चूज सम ऑब्सक्योर प्लेस जहां किसी का ध्यान ना हो, लेकिन गांधीनगर सीट से नहीं हो पाएगा.
Yes, ma'am. Very well said, ma'am. Very, very well said, भाई. मैम, आपको मैं एक किस्सा सुनाता हूँ. ये सन 2008 का है और ये असल किस्सा है. ये There was a group of performers, dancers भी थे और थिएटर एक प्ले का भी ग्रुप था, और मेरे को भी इनके साथ जाना था पेरिस परफॉर्म करने के लिए. मैं अपनी फौज की शॉर्ट सर्विस कमीशन 5 साल जो है वो स्टेंट तभी कंप्लीट किया था मैंने. और सुनने में ये आया था कि जो डायरेक्टर साहब थे वो खूब सीखे गए थे फ्रेंच, क्योंकि बॉन्जो कवतालेबू एंड बेसिक थोड़ा ये लर्न. Before going on stage, he forgot how do you say ladies and gentlemen in French. अब क्योंकि स्क्रिप्ट इज वेरी सिमिलर, नो लाइक BONJOUR, वो अंग्रेजी में अगर पढ़नी आती तो आप फ्रेंच पढ़ लेंगे, तो रत्तू तोते की तरह. तो उन्होंने what he did was something very, he thought it was a very smart act. So from the stage he rushed towards the, यहाँ पे वॉशरूम है ना, वहाँ पे लिखा होता है kings, queens, ladies, gents. तो वो he learned, he mugged it up. Okay, and he went on stage and bonjour, kawatalebo, good evening, ladies' toilets and gents' toilets. And you could imagine the response in the audience. Everybody was in splits completely. Ma'am, so it has been such a wonderful, it's been amazing speaking to you, ma'am. Really, you have that magical effect on your audience as a performer, as a speaker. Your presence is so charismatic. Really, ma'am, adore you to another level. Thank you so much for spending time.
Thank you. It's been fun, Mohammed. Come to another performance of mine soon.
Very soon, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. Thank you very much. Take care, ma'am. Bye, ma'am. Bye. Just ending the broadcast.